It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I had always been a knight, sworn to the crown, sworn to the kingdom, sworn to a duty that left little room for anything else. But when the call came, when I was summoned to stand guard over him, King Adrian, the newly crowned ruler, I had no idea what awaited me. The royal court buzzed with tension that day. The coronation had been nothing short of grand. The crown had been placed upon Adrian's head with ceremony and fanfare, the gleaming gold settling on his brow like a promise. His young face was set with a quiet resolve, but beneath that exterior, I saw the uncertainty in his eyes. The same uncertainty I had known in him as a child. The vulnerable look of someone still finding their footing in a world too large for them. But now, that boy had transformed before my eyes. He was no longer just a prince. He was a king, and with that title came a weight I knew he wasn't ready to carry. I had been with him since he was a child, watching him grow into this position, always a steady presence at his side. He trusted me as a knight, as a protector, as the one who would ensure his safety. The monarchy was fragile, the threats against it as real as the air we breathed, and so my duty was clear. It was my job to keep him safe, to guard him against the treachery that could seep in from any direction. But today, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't just there to protect him from his enemies. I was there to protect him from himself. As I stood in the shadows of the royal halls, watching him take the throne, I couldn't help but feel a pang in my chest. The crown, the title, the kingdom, all of it weighed heavily on him. It was more than a burden. It was a prison, and he had stepped into it willingly. Yet, there was something in the way he carried himself that made me proud. He had become the king he was always destined to be, though part of me wondered if he wanted it at all. I tried to push the thought away. This was not my place. I was here to serve, not to question. And yet, as his gaze met mine, something shifted. It wasn't just the weight of the crown. It was a weight of loneliness, of isolation. His eyes, once full of youthful curiosity, were now guarded, distant. He was a king, yes, but at what cost? Magnus, he said softly, his voice barely audible over the murmurs of the court. I will need you now more than ever. My heart skipped a beat as I looked at him, his words piercing through the noise of the crowded room. He looked at me as though I were his only anchor in a sea of uncertainty. And in that moment, I realized something that made my chest tighten. He wasn't just speaking to me as his protector. He was speaking to me as something else, something more personal, something I couldn't put into words. I nodded, keeping my composure despite the swirling emotions inside. Always, Your Majesty, I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. I was his knight, his protector, his guardian. But as I stood there, watching him, my king, my responsibility, I couldn't ignore the fire that smoldered inside me whenever I looked at him. The line between duty and desire had blurred in a way that left me feeling both conflicted and drawn to him in a way I could never have imagined. I couldn't explain it. I wasn't supposed to feel this way. I had sworn an oath to serve him, to protect him, to stand by him through everything. But now, in the silence of the royal hall, I wonder if my oath had always been for something more. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself growing closer to King Adrian, though the bond we shared was a dangerous one. My duties were clear. Keep him safe, watch over him, ensure no harm befell him. But in the quiet moments, when the kingdom was asleep, and we were alone in the privacy of his chambers, the silence between us was filled with unspoken words. There was a tension between us, a magnetic pull I couldn't escape. His presence was overwhelming. He was so close, so vulnerable, yet so unreachable. I was his knight, sworn to loyalty and honor, and yet the feelings I had for him went far beyond that. I knew it was wrong, but every glance, every lingering touch, every quiet word we exchanged made it harder to resist the pull of my heart. One evening, as the moonlight filtered to the large windows of his chamber, Adrian looked at me, his gaze soft but intense. "Magnus," he began, his voice low, as if testing the weight of his own words. "Do you ever feel like you're more than just a knight? That there's something else?" My breath caught in my throat. "Your Majesty," I began, my voice shaky, "I am nothing but your protector. My loyalty is to you and the kingdom." But even as I spoke, I could see the way his lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to say something more, something that would bridge the gap between us. I saw it in the way his eyes held mine, as if searching for something beyond duty. And then, without thinking, I took a step closer to him, my armor scraping softly against the stone floor. His breath hitched, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something dangerous in his eyes, a desire he couldn't hide, one that mirrored my own. It was inevitable that the political tensions in the kingdom would rise. The nobles, the council, the whispers of enemies at the borders. It all threatened to tear the monarchy apart. But amid the chaos, something else began to consume me. Adrian, his desire for comfort, for reassurance, pulled me closer. And each time he leaned on me, each time he turned to me for solace, it became harder to deny what was blossoming between us. We were not just bound by loyalty or duty. We were bound by something much more dangerous. One night, as we met in secret in the dimly lit hallway of the palace, Adrian's breath came in quick, shallow gasps. His hand found mine, squeezing it gently as if he were afraid to let go. "Magnus," he whispered, his voice strained, "I can't do this alone." "I'm here, Your Majesty," I answered, my voice thick with emotion. My fingers brushed his, an innocent touch that sent shivers down my spine. He stepped closer, his lips mere inches from mine. The air between us crackled with tension. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, and I couldn't help myself. I reached for him, pulling him into an embrace that was both comforting and electric. Our lips met in a kiss that was everything I had imagined and more. It was slow, deliberate, a forbidden act that neither of us could have predicted. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. But then, reality crashed down on us. We broke apart, gasping for breath, the weight of what we had just done settling heavily in the air around us. "We can't do this," Adrian whispered, his voice thick with regret and longing. But I knew, deep down, that there was no turning back now. We had crossed a line, one that would change everything. The days after that night were a blur of confusion and guilt. Adrian and I had promised to keep our distance, to return to roles we had once played. But the moments of weakness, the stolen glances, the hidden touches, they all reminded me of the love we had discovered, a love that could never be. Adrian's responsibilities as king weighed heavily on him, and I could see the burden in his eyes. The crown that had once seemed like a symbol of power now seemed like a prison, chaining him to the very throne he had been crowned to sit upon. And all I wanted was to ease his pain, to remind him that he wasn't alone. One evening, as we sat together in his private study, the flickering light of the fireplace casting shadows on the walls, Adrian spoke quietly, his voice tinged with regret. "I never wanted this," he admitted, his voice almost breaking. "I never wanted the crown or the power or any of it. I wanted to be free, to be loved." I reached for his hand, my fingers brushing against his palm. "Adrian," I whispered, my heart aching with the depth of his words. "You are loved, more than you'll ever know." But even as I spoke those words, I could see the weight of his duty pulling him away from me. The kingdom, the council, the politics, they were all pulling him in different directions, and I was powerless to stop it. But in that moment, I made a decision. I would protect him, not just as a knight, but as the man I loved, no matter the cost. The day came when everything came to a head. Enemies within the kingdom had risen up, and the political tensions were no longer a quiet whisper. They were a roaring storm. Adrian was torn, caught between his duty to the crown and the love that had bloomed between us, a love that threatened everything he had built. We stood in the royal gardens, the moonlight shining down on us, casting long shadows on the ground. Adrian's face was grim, his shoulders heavy with the burden of command. "I have to make a choice," he said, his voice strained, his eyes searching mine. "Duty or love? The kingdom or you?" My heart shattered at the words. I had always known this moment would come, the moment where duty and love would collide. But I hadn't been prepared for how much it would hurt. And yet, as I stood there, looking into his eyes, I knew what my answer would be. "You don't have to choose," I whispered. "I choose you. Always." The world around us seemed to fall away as Adrian took a step forward, his hand reaching for mine. And in that moment, we made a choice. Together, love or duty, both, in a way that no one could have ever predicted. And as the kingdom's fate hung in the balance, we faced the future, not as king and knight, but as two men bound by love and the promise of forever.